Ooh, you didn't tell me you were a brainiac.
Hey Brainiacs, producer Scotty here, and before we get into the episode, I did just want to let you know, we had a lot of technical difficulties this time around. There were some storms rolling through, there was some lost internet connection. I won't bore you with the technical BS, but basically the video is not going to look as good as it did. If you're listening outside of just a couple of stutters because of loss of connection, you're not going to notice much of a difference. But if you're watching, this is a lower quality than our normal product. So we hope you will forgive us. I do just want to reassure you the content in this episode is great. We do some hot takes. It's going to get you excited about the NFL season coming up, but it's just not going to look quite as good. So that's all I have to say. We'll get into the episode now. Please bear with us. Stick with us. It'll be worth it.
Welcome into LeatherBrainz, your host here, Slapdog, and we have a full crew here today. I'm joined by Scotty Del Rey and Alan Casanova Castro. Gentlemen, it's kind of weird to all be back together. I don't think this has been the case in over a month now, I think. So it's great to see you guys. How you doing, Alan? It's been a while.
I just took a drink.
All right. Yeah, I know. I asked you that right when you took a drink.
It's been good. It's just been busy season at work. So, yeah.
You still have all your fingers from the 4th of July? Let me see.
Yes.
Put them up.
Show me those paws.
Yes, and toes. That's like a weird fetish thing I just participated in, I'm pretty sure. But
my wife got hit by a firework on the 4th. She still has all of her appendages and limbs, but she was bleeding pretty good.
Yeah, we all survived.
Yeah. She should have been quicker than that.
She should have. I didn't realize she got hit, and the firework turned over, and it all just started launching into the crowd. And I just sat there. I mean, there was explosions left and right of me, and I'm just laughing hysterically because I was like, "This is pretty hilarious." And there's a bunch of older people there, and they're like getting up and trying to run into the garage, and I'm literally just sitting there just laughing because it was comical. And then explosions get done, and I kind of go into the garage to see who's all in there, and my wife's not. And I was like, did my wife get hit? And they're like, yeah, she's in the kitchen right now. And I walk in, and there's blood gushing down her ankle, and I'm like, oh my god.
Oh geez.
So yeah, she's okay. She's fine.
You just left her on the battlefield. You didn't even.
She was sitting a couple seats away from me, and she got up and darted. And I think that was probably the worst thing she could have done because that's when it hit her. If she would have sat still, I think she would have been fine.
People don't realize that the fireworks vision's based on movement. So by staying really still, it didn't know to go for you, but everybody that scattered, it knew to go for their ankles. And that's,
well, it looks for the light waves too, and that's kind of why, like the moon, that's why it shoots up towards the moon, is because there's light up there,
like photosynthesis. You know, the Mythbusters thing when they did the if you run in rain, you get more wet. It's kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
similar thing.
It is very. We used to, those Saturn missile batteries, those things. They just basically shoot out firecrackers. It goes.
Oh yeah.
We used to line those up at each other and do like Revolutionary War style. We'd like face them right at us and wear like glasses and cover.
I was gonna say, were you wearing glasses?
And just let them pelt you. We used to do that.
It's amazing. You still have all your fingers.
Yeah, looking back on it, we did.
Like, would you let? Yeah, you have children. Would you let them do that to each other?
No. My parents didn't love me.
That's the difference between iPad kids and real kids.
It's true. Let's shoot these fireworks at ourselves and see what happened.
That's what happened before.
It used to be, actually, we did it once at your lot, Matt.
Yeah.
On the dock.
I was there for at least a couple of the stupid firework shenanigans.
We would just be on the end of the dock and you couldn't go anywhere. You just had to sit there and take it.
Well, I guess at least if you your clothes lit on fire, you just jump in the lake.
Yeah, that was our thought. Was like, if something happens, you can just jump in the water. But it also
you're bleeding like water. There. It's clean.
Yeah. So there we go. But we made it through the 4th.
We did. Scotty, I would presume you also have all your limbs.
I do.
Okay.
My niece cut her hair on fire. That was the only. Yeah, she's fine.
Which one? The older niece or the younger niece?
The younger one.
Oh my gosh.
She was playing with a sparkler and one of the little things flipped up into her hair, and then she just goes, "My hair's on fire." What? She was fine.
Was it bad? Like, did they have to cut it or anything?
It smelled like burnt hair for a while, but she didn't have to cut it, and it didn't get her skin. So it was a win, all things considered.
Alan, do you have any Is your family okay? It seems like we're all fine, but maybe our families.
Yeah, I don't know. Your wife got hit. Nieces are getting hit. We didn't really have anything happen. What I did was I took my nephew. We drove down to Missouri because I don't like to light the fireworks anymore, and I'm not going to let my kids light them. But we went over and we're going to watch them over at my cousin's house, and so I was like, "Hey, I will just buy you a bunch of fireworks. Can you just light them for us?" So I mitigated a lot of risk. I just had to pay for them. So
seems like a pretty good deal. That's what I didn't light it. I lit like 2, and I was like, no, I'd rather just kind of sit here like this.
We
Seems like a
we
lot of
did
work.
have. So wife worked. She had to work on the 4th night, so we we lit fireworks at our house on the 3rd, and it was just fountains. All we had were fountains and like those flowers. That's all we were lighting because doesn't like them. But we had some old guy like wobble 2 blocks down and start writing our house number down. So I had to go out there and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "You guys are lighting off dynamite." I was like, "What?" I was like, "I literally have a pile of fountains right here." He's like, "Nope, I know you guys are lighting dynamite." And I was like, "Okay."
Are you in an HOA?
Yeah.
What a douche.
Did you trip him? Is this illegal?
On his way out?
No, I was like, "Is this illegal?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how everybody's getting all this dynamite." And I was like, "All right, well, I don't know what to tell you, man, but we don't have dynamite this house, so I'm just gonna continue to light these flowers. Have a great day."
You always hear a story about like war vets and PTSD, and like it really messes them up. You think he was like a Vietnam guy?
He was definitely retired military. We chatted for a little bit after I calmed him down. He was retired military, and
like, hey, this is just for color. There's no sound.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is he's sitting there talking about it, and like one street over legitimately let off what sounded like a pipe bomb. He's like, "Oh," and I was like, "Yeah, see, that's them." Like, so the rest of the night, his name was Bob. The rest of the night, we kept hearing loud ones, and I kept telling my wife, I was like, "Tell Bob to go waddle his ass down to their house and figure out what's going on."
Bob's gonna be pissed now.
God damn it, Bob!
I just picture, I don't know how SpongeBob fluenced you guys are, but I picture like the old guy with a walker. Like that's what I picture Bob to look like.
Pretty much, he had a spotlight because he was shining it on the house to see what their house number was, and he was legitimately just writing house numbers down. So
that's Neighborhood Watch.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see.
You remember Neighborhood Watch? Was that ever actually a thing, or they just put signs up to make people scared of like Batman in your neighborhood?
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question because it definitely there were the signs around, but there wasn't like you never saw anybody watching anything.
Roaming patrols of Neighborhood Watch, folks.
I think they just automatically put those up if you have like a certain number of elderly folks in your neighborhood, and they're like,
"Oh, this is
pretty damn sure anything you do is being watched right now."
Yeah,
it was more of a warning for just the homeowners to be like, "Careful, somebody's gonna get all over your ass over something stupid."
Yeah, you probably if you don't have a couple signs up around your neighborhood, Alan, it sounds like Bob might be the perfect candidate for.
Shout out Bob.
So hey, shout out Bob. All right, gentlemen. Well, hey, this is an NFL podcast, so we are 7 minutes in and have not talked NFL at all, and our Brainiac community is thirsty for it. So we're going to be talking news. We got to give you guys the most up-to-date news, but then this episode is mainly going to be focused on hot takes. So all 3 of us have brought hot takes to the table. We brought a couple just in case there's some repeat. We don't know what each of our hot takes is going to be, so we're planning on bringing 3. Might be a little bit more than that because we have some backups in the event that maybe somebody has poached one of the other's hot takes. So that's primarily what we're going to be here today is bringing you some NFL 2025-2026 season hot takes for this upcoming year. But let's jump into the news, and we will start with the GOAT conversation. Let's talk about Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Are they now besties, gentlemen? In an interview with Up and Adams, Patrick Mahomes discusses his legacy and relationship with Tom Brady. This is a quote directly from Patrick Mahomes, and he said, "And having Tom, a guy like that, say that just motivates me even more. I've actually talked to Tom a good amount this offseason. It's cool that he wants to give me advice. He doesn't have to be like that. He's such a good dude, and I have so much respect for him, and I'll take any advice he gives me." Mahomes then went on to say, they were talking they stopped talking about Tom Brady here in this part, but Mahomes went on to say, whenever you lose, you kind of have this taste in your mouth that you want to go out there and revenge and whatever you want to say. He said, at the same time, I feel like I've had to sit back and just listen to people talk, and I'm like, let's just play football and handle it all out there. I just want to go out there and show who we are as the Kansas City Chiefs. And the last note here is Tom Brady has also been on record saying that if he wants anyone to overcome him in the GOAT conversation, The person he would like that to be is Patrick Mahomes. So pretty cool. I mean, this is all off season. We're digging for anything at this point. So I figured I would throw that in here. You guys are obviously Kansas City Chiefs fans. So cool, not cool, don't care. What are your thoughts on this relationship between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes perhaps blossoming?
Matt, you want to take this one?
Yeah, goats are herd animals, so they gotta stick together. So I appreciate that. I like Tom Brady. I still regard him as the GOAT. I think Patrick Mahomes, despite his success, he's got some boxes to check before that conversation gets real. Because Tom Brady, the thing about it, and these GOAT conversations always devolve into this. It's always like, look at what he's doing, it's so amazing, versus, well, this other guy did it for like 20 years, and that's crazy.
Sure.
So it's the same thing with MJ and LeBron. LeBron's just like he's a marvel because he's just been at the top of the league for so long. For many people listening to this podcast don't remember an NBA without LeBron James. Like that's insane. And it's the same sort of thing with Tom Brady. He was just so good for so long. I just think Patrick Mahomes needs that longevity to really be considered as the GOAT.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think it's neat. I think it's neat that Tom's talking to Pat, and they all chat. I think there's like a fraternity there. But I agree, it's definitely like a LeBron MJ situation where you have one that did it for a long time and won a lot of rings versus I think somebody that if you look at the statistics, you're like, this guy is just blowing that out of the water. Like what the pace he's on going into year 9, and still in year 9, his season has never ended before the conference title game is insane. And I think what's ultimately what we're getting into, and I just talked about it this weekend with somebody else because we were talking about Jalen Hurts and the shit he gets and Mahomes and people hating on Mahomes and he's not very good and it's all his team. And you look at it, it's
Wait,
almost
people are
like
saying that Mahomes is not that good and it's his team?
if
Or
you
that
look at
it's Jalen Hurts is not that good and
well,
it's his team?
Hurts and then
Okay,
Mahomes.
okay,
You look at what
gotcha.
Mahomes did and getting a lot of shit for losing the Super Bowl.
Gotcha.
And then it's like he's become a victim of his own success. They're tired of seeing him there. He's been to so many Super Bowls already in going into year 9. He's only played, what? It's 9 since he was drafted, but playing 8 years, right?
Mhm.
So, and if you think about that, he already has played in 5 Super Bowls. It's like at some point, I think what's ultimately going to happen, and you can kind of already see it happen, is that he's going to be a victim of that success, and people are going to give him more shit for losing than actually marveling at the fact that look how many times he's actually gotten his team there. All the while winning a Super Bowl where like his top 4 wide receivers for one of the Super Bowls were Kelsey, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jerick McKinnon, and then everybody's like, wow, it's Andy Reid. And so it's just going to continue to evolve in that. So I think it's nice. I think it's fresh air when actually you have one of the quote unquote old heads come back and say like, no, this guy is actually probably only one that can do it. And they have that relationship. I think it just solidifies what many people think. And if you're not just like I know we're in the hot take market, but if you're not in the X hot take market, I think it's nice to hear something that sounds a little bit more like on solid ground than just some random from the hip firing hot take.
That's interesting because you guys sometimes label me as a Chiefs hater. And I go back and forth in that camp, admittedly. I think sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. But I would never sit here and say Patrick Mahomes is not one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, no matter what year it is. We could be talking 5 years from now, and he's still in that conversation. And you can say Andy Reid this or the coaching is that, but at the end of the day, he's doing it. And so, to me, that's just naive for people to sit there and say that he's not. And regardless of if you're a Chiefs fan or a Chiefs hater, you still have to sit here and respect what he has done and will ultimately continue to do because, like you said, he's been to 5 Super Bowls in the last 8 years of his play. Like that's amazing. That in if you're a Patriots fan, if you're any fan of any team in the NFL, you would be salivating at the mouth at the opportunity to have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, bar none. So that to me is just that's people hating to hate, and that's them just trying to stir the pot, in my opinion. While we're talking about stirring the pot, let's talk about Asante Samuel. He said that the Dolphins are run like, quote, a little league team, and he calls Mike McDaniel a pushover, he being the head coach for the Dolphins. The Dolphins reportedly have been interested in signing Asante Samuel's son, Asante Samuel Jr. This was a quote from Asante Samuel. He said, they're sensitive. There's no leadership in the organization. Mike McDaniel's a pushover. Chris Grier, the GM, has no backbone. They're running this team like a little league team. Is he wrong?
Respect.
I mean, is he wrong? And we've had conversations about Mike McDaniels and about, we talk about Hard Knocks and how we like him as far as what play caller is concerned, but you get to see behind the scenes and you get to see who Mike McDaniel is, and it kind of seemed like in Hard Knocks like he didn't have the respect of his team. I don't know if Asante Samuel is completely wrong here. You guys agree? Disagree?
I don't know. I mean, certainly we've talked about it many times that you do get the impression, even when the Dolphins were just killing it and their offense was unstoppable, you always had the impression that McDaniel is just like kind of along for the ride. Like, I'm sure his offensive mind is seems to be great, but it's just you never got the vibe that he was respected like you see so many of the great head coaches in the NFL are respected by their teams. So I assume Asante has got a little bit more information given the fact that he's plugged in, and it doesn't surprise me that he's come to this conclusion. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it is what it is with with McDaniel, and he's gonna have to prove himself in the next year or two. Otherwise, he's gonna be gone. It's just the way that it is. Unfortunately, the turnaround is that fast in the NFL today.
Yeah, I think what's funny to me is if you go back, I forget, not this year but the year before, think of how far we went from that game where the Dolphins put 70 on the Broncos. And now you fast forward to now and you look at those two teams, you're like, well, I think the Broncos might be, trending a little bit more positively than the Dolphins are. You kind of know what you have with that team. They seem to be, shedding some of the weight of their veterans. You're not really sure where they're going. But I think a lot of people could have said McDaniels is a pushover. I don't think he necessarily commanded anything. You're just watching, not knowing anything. If you just looked at it, you're like, oh, that guy looks like he's just kind of a bro and some joggers hanging out. Like, wouldn't say like he commanded the room or had any real presence there to like demand any of that. And I think it's not surprising. I think if that were to be true, obviously this is just one person's take, but I think if you're looking at it objectively, you're like, yeah, I could probably see some of the holes here. You could see some of it play out throughout the season. You look at what happens to these Dolphins teams time over time is they start off pretty good. Things kind of are going well. They have a couple injuries. The wheels fall off. They don't know what they're doing. Season's over. They trend downward always. They're never trending up to end the season. And I think a lot of that has to do with coaching and how those teams are ran. It's like they don't seem to improve or seem to like make adjustments as the season goes on to make themselves better. It's just kind of like, this is what we got. I hope everything stays together and we'll see how it rides out. And when they're in a division like that and you have the Bills and, the Patriots are rebuilding, it's like, you got to keep iterating on that. You can't just be status quo. So I would agree with what Scotty's saying. It's like, I think McDaniels finds himself on the hot seat. I could see it trending that way.
Well, last week we talked about the Jonnu Smith trade to the Steelers, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jalen Ramsey, and obviously that left a hole in the tight end room for the Dolphins, and they went out and they signed Darren Waller. He unretires. The Dolphins traded the Giants. I want to say it was a 7th round pick for Darren Waller because he was still under contract with them. He unretires. Waller was quoted as saying he wants to come back or wanted to come back, but only to play in Miami. What does this signing do for the Dolphins in your guys' mind? Anything.
Nothing.
Well,
Nothing.
we have to remember that Darren Waller was elite for a little bit. So like there is some upside with, you look at the season that Jonnu Smith had, you can't expect Darren Waller to do anything like that. But he does have some upside. The biggest problem with Waller toward the end of his career, or what we thought was the end of his career, was injury. If he can stay healthy, he can be usable. And really this Dolphins offense, the only reason Jonnu Smith got so much work there is because the offense like fell off the tracks a little bit, and Tyreek Hill was struggling and Waddle was struggling. If the offense is working like it's supposed to, you don't expect your tight end to have to do anything more than 500 yards receiving for the season, right? You have other weapons that are supposed to be doing that, and the tight end is just sort of that release valve. He could be useful in that role, but coming off of a year retired and then just injury plagued the years before that, it's difficult to evaluate, what kind of impact he's going to have, if any.
Yeah, I mean, he's 32 years old. He's a few years removed from even playing professional football. He's 5 years removed from his last 1,000-yard season. His last 1,000-yard season was in COVID. He never had double-digit touchdown receptions. And I think a lot of what he was building on in like 18, 19, 20 was he's on this upward trend. Like, look how good he could be. And that was probably his peak. And I don't think, his peak for a couple years is like kind of what we are almost demanding out of our tight ends now. If you look at the tight end market and how they're leveraged, it's like we almost expect that now. And a large part of that has to do with things like what Kittle's done, what Kelsey's done. We've seen, Hawkinson come in. We've seen, all these elite tight ends come
Mark
in.
Andrews in that list. And you look at the tight end position, typically they have a little bit longer of a shelf life, right? Than your wide receivers and your running backs. Like the tight end position, Zach Ertz is another great example. Also 32 years old, had a great season last year. And the Commanders signed him to another 1-year deal because he was usable. He was doing well. So all's to say, age certainly came to mind for me with this news right out of the gate, alongside with him obviously being removed from the NFL for a season. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm still struggle with how I feel about.
Do we lose him?
We might have lost him.
I think to echo where Slaps is going with this is, I think there's a lot more question marks. Obviously, I think from a physicality standpoint, I think Darren Waller could be usable. I just don't think if you're looking for this insane rate of return on the signing that is Darren Waller, I just don't think you're going to get it. Don't think it's going to happen. I think he's past his prime. I think injuries are definitely a concern. And I think it is the 2 years that he was excelling, those elite 2 years are an afterthought. He actually has more years where he's not. He has more years where he's very mid-level kind of but I think he had that window of time, but I think people are looking at that thinking, I'm going to get that every year out of him. And honestly, we fall victim to that. This as NFL fans and fantasy players as well. You're like, you remember the 1 or 2 good years the guy had. You're like, well, if he does it again randomly, it's going to work out for me, and not be like, okay, well, what I'm probably going to have to use Darren Waller and what they will probably use him in is like very situational based packages where it's like, okay, if he's an athlete and can get up, maybe he's more featured around the goal line. Maybe that gives him better of a target share for touchdowns. But I just think of him being as an every down tight end or being out there all the time. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's a name signing. I don't think it's necessarily like anything impactful for the team long term.
Yeah, and I don't think there are very many NFL fans that look at this and expect him to make a giant splash. I think it's more of a, not really a depth signing. I expect him to play, but it is sort of just like filling a need and someone who wants to be there, and he might be usable. So, fill the need. I don't think it's going to be anything more than that.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if we're going to get Slaps back at all. We'll see. You want to move on? Should we just continue on?
Yeah, let's just send it.
Okay. The Steelers re-sign general manager Omar Khan to a 3-year contract. Man, we must be in the heat of summer. We must be just in the thick of NFL scraping the bottom of the barrel news. But this is news came out of Steelers camp. I guess these things happen all the time. That you see execs get re-signed all the time. A lot of this is kind of protecting themselves if they get, in case they get cut. I think the funny thing is, I don't think the Steelers have really done shit. That's almost their calling card over the last few years. It's like, you haven't really done anything. You kind of sign mediocre players and then just rely on Tomlin's genius to take over at some point during the season. And then you end up with 9 wins. I think it's funny because it's like, you put whatever you want in this pot. Okay. And then you throw Tomlin into the pot, you stir it up, and then you get 9 wins. And I think that's kind of been the recipe. But what's funny enough is I feel like this offseason is the one where it's like, okay, we're actually trying to put talent on the field. We're trying to bring people in here to do some things. And we'll see how the Rodgers experiment pans out. But I think this is actually probably one of his better years as being a GM and actually getting talent on the field. I think he's really good at drafting. I would say that is probably his key calling card, is he definitely gets talent in the door as rookies. I think it's all the offseason moves and signing veterans that he kind of sucks at so far.
Yeah, the reason that this jumped out at me is the timing. Obviously the contract is what the contract is. So he was either going to be re-signed or not. But the timing is just kind of interesting because if the Rodgers experiment collapses and fails, like I think a lot of people expect it to, or at least very few people are going to be surprised if Aaron Rodgers just kind of sucks and then he retires and it's over. If that happens, it's not going to surprise me if this organization goes through a total overhaul, including replacing Mike Tomlin, because it's just been mediocrity for the last decade for this team, and they eventually are going to have to make some serious moves. And when you look at the mediocrity that's taken place, it just seems like the front office has not done a good enough job to give this team the explosiveness that they need to take that next step. And, with Tomlin there, Tomlin is widely regarded as one of the best coaches in the NFL. You expect him to have success. And I think it's arguable that given the rosters, even though, they've had some talent here and there, of course, but given the roster, going 500 or making the playoffs is sort of a success, and that can be attributed largely to Tomlin. But the reason they're in that situation is because the front office has failed to put together a cohesive roster that is capable of having a lot of success. And so it's just an interesting timing thing, because you could see, they re-signed him to a 3-year contract. You could see at the end of the season them being like, well, we kind of want to change everything now.
Yeah. It's mediocrity, though. If you look at the NFL, I think it's kind of a modern marvel that they've had sustained mediocrity. Like, they haven't fallen off a cliff ever. They're just kind of, they look at the cliff and then they just keep going, but they're never actually falling off the cliff where you're like, wow, this team tanked. I think a lot of that has to do, and I think what your take is definitely focused on the offensive side. Because if you
definitely
flip this to the defensive side, it's one of the best units, in the NFL. You go TJ Watt, veteran Cam Hayward, Derek Harmon, Alex Highsmith. You have talent on this Steelers defense where you're like, wow, the defensive line, they play downhill. You kind of know what you're getting from them. It's just the offense. It's the offense have been like, ever since Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown days, it's been, what the hell are we doing? Like, we don't have that. And when they had that, obviously it was Super Bowls and AFC title games and they're competing. Without it, it's like 9 wins. We're sneaking into the playoffs just to get as a sacrificial lamb to somebody else. And then we get the break speed off of us, and then we're out. So it's definitely super interesting. We'll see what happens with the Steelers come this season. I think obviously with the signing of Aaron Rodgers, that highlights and signals that, like, hey, we're kind of in win now mode. And I also don't know if that signals anything behind the scenes with the Steelers. Like, if Tomlin's giving any indication like, hey, I'm not going to do this very much longer. Like, I might be out. Like, if you're gonna do anything, you better do it now, because I'm not going to be around much longer. And I think when you have those signals that we're seeing outwardly, I think it might signal some change that's happening inwardly with this team. So we'll see what happens. Definitely will be a talking point, as Aaron Rodgers always freaking is every single season that we seem to do this. But transitioning to the Bills for a little bit before we move on to our hot take market, and it doesn't sound like Slaps is going to be back. I think the old internet went goodbye. So I don't know if we'll get Slaps back for the hot take market. But last topic before we get to the hot takes is Maxwell Harrison, the cornerback first round pick for the Bills, was accused of sexual assault. The lawsuit was filed Tuesday in federal court in Kentucky by a woman who claims Harrison entered her dorm room without being invited, ignored her when she said she didn't want to have sexual intercourse, forcibly removed her bottoms, and sexually assaulted her. I think that would classify as sexual assault. The AP does not typically name alleged victims in the sexual assault, so we don't really have a name. And obviously this happened on a campus, so there's school implications involved here. Bills currently have no comment. However, Bills GM Brandon Beane said back in April they fully investigated Harrison and was an quote unquote impeccable kid. I'm sure that's notwithstanding any of this sexual assault. This is tough. This is a tough look always for the NFL. It's always tough when you draft somebody that has problems. And I think the one thing that stood out to me about this is, like, obviously we have to let the legal process do its thing. There's always he said, she said in some of this, where if that actually happened, or, he, did do that, that's awful. Like, I don't think he has any place in the NFL. We don't need any of that shit anymore. I think we've dealt with a lot of that, and not trying to say the Chiefs are absolved of that or any of our favorite teams are absolved of that. I think there's just no place for it in general. I think it's just got to go. But I think for the Bills, on a team that is trying to build on success of the previous season, coming off of Josh Allen MVP, having some real needs on defense and trying to solidify those, this sucks. Yeah. This is not what you want to hear in the offseason if you're a Bills fan.
Yeah, it really does. I'm going to say the same thing I've said every time we talk about a headline like this, which is you have to let the legal system play out, because maybe he's a scumbag who does scumbag shit, or maybe this accuser is a scumbag who's trying to capitalize on someone who was just drafted in the first round of the NFL, right? There are scumbags of both genders, and sometimes shit happens. So obviously you're right. If they find that this took place obviously there's no place for this in the NFL. And I think NFL fans have come around to that a little bit. You know, there's been just so many egregious examples in the NFL of somebody just doing something atrocious, you know, video of a giant NFL athlete beating up on a woman, and then
Yeah.
you know, they're just there playing again. And it's like, okay, at some point, you know, everybody makes mistakes, but if you're going to do something like that, there's just not
Yeah.
there's not any reason that you should be making millions of dollars and being famous. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, mistake being you went through a red light, caught speeding, you know, maybe you had some drugs on you, not you brutally beat a woman, you know, like that. I think that obviously has no place. What's funny is I was reading, and I know that weird transition to funny off after we're talking about this, but it was a conversation with some, it was like some staffers of the Cowboys in the 90s, and they're talking about Michael Irvin, and he was telling a story about how Michael Irvin was you know, on the hot seat, and he was kind of under suspension, and you know, basically had to mind his P's and Q's because Michael Irvin had a sexual assault charge against him, and he had done some shady shit. And he was the Cowboys had a barbershop in their locker room, and one of the rookies went and sat down on the chair, and Michael Irvin was like, "Nope, you got to get up. You got to get up, rookie." And he was an offensive lineman, and the offensive lineman basically was like, "No, I'm not getting up." And he was getting hyped up by the other offensive line. I'm like, "No, don't get up out of that chair. He can wait." And Michael Irvin went and grabbed like a pair of scissors and like stabbed him in the neck. And he was like bleeding from the neck. And it's like, what's funny is like the old heads will talk, and you hear people waxing poetic about, oh, back in the day, you know, we just didn't have the internet. This shit has been happening for so long. People have been idiots for so long in the NFL. And I know it's not a necessarily NFL problem, but it's like NFL is the, you know, has the most people in it and is the most popular, but it's just, I wish we would take more of a hard stance on this. And I know it's tough because you got to let the legal process play out, but it's almost like if this happens, automatic suspended until we get it figured out. And I felt even some of the same things for like Rashee Rice, like even when he did, like just get it suspended and get it figured out and then come to a decision. But it's like just being like, we'll see.
Well, it's tough because you have to keep the principle in mind of innocent until proven guilty. You know, especially in a case like this, which of course I don't know anything about this particular case with Maxwell Harrison. I don't know anything about the accuser. I know nothing. But of course, there should be alarm bells ringing when some young man becomes a millionaire for the first time.
Oh, I agree.
And within like a week, he's accused of all this stuff. So like, obviously it could have happened. It very well could have happened. There should be an investigation. But if the NFL just starts suspending people, you know, without having any of the information, it just makes it's a tough situation.
I get it. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
It's obviously alarm bells. Could have something happened and she was like, well, I'm not going to do anything. Oh, wait, he's rich now? Just kidding. I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That shitty thing he did. So it's, who knows? But I guess from, you know, morality aside, which I think we're aligned with on this being a no-no. I think for the Bills, it just sucks because it's like,
yeah, it does.
I think their draft picks over the last few years have kind of been hemming and hawing. Like, I don't think they've had like a true hit overall where they've kind of built on it. And you kind of see that's where the Bills team, I don't want to say they're trending because they just had a great year, but they started off not great. The year before they were kind of not great for a while, had to fire their offensive coordinator. They're playing with fire a little bit, and they need to get these draft picks right because that's how teams sustain success. So we'll see how this plays out. But you know, starting, you know, projected to be a starting corner for them going into next season, dealing with, you know, some serious legal issues doesn't certainly bode well for them. Do you think this impacts, I guess, in your mind, Scotty, at all, like how you visualize the Bills going into this 2025 season, or no?
I mean, it definitely is not a good impact. The question is just to what degree it negatively impacts. And I think a lot of it is going to depend because the people in that locker room, of course, don't know the details of this situation. I'm sure that Maxwell has his own version of this story, whether it's just totally fabricated or whether it's somewhere in between. But you have to imagine that there is some friction that it causes in the locker room when you have somebody who's being publicly accused of something so terrible. You know, the good news for the Bills organization is that, you know, having a great corner is obviously really great, but it's not your quarterback. You know, it's a position that you can kind of work through. And even if there's a little bit of friction or it's not perfect, or even if, you know, something, you know, he gets suspended down the line or gets kicked out of the NFL or sent to prison for whatever, you can kind of work through that with some positions in football. And cornerback is such a difficult position to play. It's very, very difficult to find someone who plays it at the really high level. In all likelihood, no matter how good Maxwell is, he's not going to be like the number one corner in football. So, you know, I could I can see them working through it just fine. It doesn't impact my outlook for the Bills in 2025. No.
Yeah, agreed. I think they should still be really good. I would expect Josh Allen to even have better numbers than last year. So we'll see what happens. Definitely it paints a picture for that team, and we'll see how the AFC shapes up. Are you ready to get into some freaking hot takes?
Yes.
I guess it's just going to be
Please,
me and
God.
you. I don't know. He's going to, all right. Slap said he's going to keep trying to join us. So we'll see if he joins us. Otherwise, this train's going to leave the station with some hot takes. So the way I envision this, and I guess we should have figured this out before we jumped on live, but we kind of just jumped on. We just kind of go round robin, and we're going to have like what our hot takes are. Are we each sharing 3? Is that
well?
How...
I think if it's just me and you, maybe we can go to 5. We'll just see what the time's like, I suppose.
Okay. And I think for those of you listening, Scotty and I kind of aligned. We're going to start with our less juicy hot takes and then end with our more juicy hot takes. So I'm going to try to follow the same cadence. I didn't necessarily put them in that order, so you might get a hodgepodge from me. But we're going to kick things off. Scotty, I'm going to hand it to you. Now, these are hot takes for the NFL going into this season. Go for it. What do you got for us?
Okay, so as you said, we're starting with maybe the less spicy ones. There is a certain segment of our listener base that is very loud on X.com, the everything app, that might disagree with what I'm going to say and has vocalized their frustration with what I'm going to say. But ultimately, I don't think it's that much of a hot take. At least it's in the very possible, or it's in the realm of possibility everyone would agree. And my first one is that the Lions are going to win the NFC North. I think they're going to do it handily. Everyone's saying, "Oh, they lost their center. Oh, they lost their offensive coordinator." And to me, it all comes down to this roster. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is arguably the best roster in the NFL, probably more like the second best roster in the NFL. But when it comes to the star power, when it comes to the depth, everything about this Lions team is set up for success and set up for a lot of wins. And I just think they're in the toughest division in the NFL. I think they're going to outcompete everyone in their division. I think they're going to be hands down the best team in the NFC North. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're a Super Bowl contender, to be honest with you.
Well, now that we got Slaps back, it almost felt like poetic that you were going to go ahead and share that being your first hot take. I feel like that brought his internet back from the dead. Hearing that Lions hot take. Slaps, now that you're back, go ahead and react to Scotty's first hot take?
Well, I will start by saying this. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So still have some spotty internet. So if I do end up falling out here, I wish I bode you all the best here, but I'm here for the moment, and it was great. I was really sad about this because I really wanted to be part of this episode. I've got some hot takes of my own. As far as Scotty's hot take, I don't know if that's a hot take. I really and I say that because
you missed it when we said we're starting with the lesser ones,
less juicy ones to start.
This is my least juicy of the hot takes.
Yeah, they're not going to all be juicy. Gotcha. So you have to kind of stack rank yours in a way that, okay, maybe people will feel the same way, but it is still a hot take, and then kind of end with your nobody's thinking about this.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you look at the Lions roster, right, and it's stacked head to toe. The primary concern for this is, what does this team look like without both their offensive and defensive coordinators and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. I don't know if it's as impactful as a lot of people would write it up to be. Obviously, they also lost their center, which I think is a really big blow. I think the Lions are going to struggle this year, and I do think the Lions are going to regress just a little bit because of those components, as well as you look at what they did last season. That's a really hard thing to repeat as far as statistically, offensively, how well they did. I think we're going to see a little bit of regression from the Lions this year, which pains me to say as a Dan Campbell lover, but I'm not as high on the Lions this year, and that's not to say I don't think they'll win the division. I think Vegas odds show that the Lions are going to be that team. I still think they're going to compete at a very high level, but they're going to have some things shake out in their favor in order for them to get all the way to the Super Bowl, and I don't know if that's going to be the case this season.
Yeah, I would largely agree. Well, since we don't know how much time we're going to give with you, Slaps, do you want to go ahead with your first hot take? We'll just transition right into yours. Like, what is?
Sure. So I'm going to do one of the less juicy ones. So I'll start with this. the Jets are going to continue to suck. The Jets are going to still be ass. Admittedly, I'm not even sure, as this should be a hot take, as I think most people have kind of come to this conclusion, but the Jets will finish third in the AFC East, and it would not surprise me if the Giants and the Jets are both competing for that third spot in the East. I see so many people, and Scotty, you included, have kind of mentioned this Justin Fields resurgence. I don't see this happening whatsoever at all. In fact, when you look at Justin Fields, when he was starting with the Steelers last season, he started with the Steelers for 7 games before he was then benched for Russell Wilson. You look at the record that the Steelers had. Justin Fields was the Steelers were 4-2 until he got benched. So let's ask ourselves, why did Justin Fields get benched? So I have a screenshot here that shows the record and the score and what Justin Fields did in those games. Week 1, they beat Atlanta 18-10. Justin Fields threw for a historic 158 yards. Week 2, they beat Denver 13-6. Justin Fields threw for 117 yards. Week 3, they beat the Chargers 23-10. Justin Fields threw for 245 yards. They lost to the Colts 27-24 in week 4. Justin Fields did throw for over 300 yards at 312. The following week, they lost to Dallas 20-17. Fields threw for 131 yards, and then they won in week 6 against the Raiders 32-13, and Fields threw for a whopping 145 yards. The Steelers won despite the poor play from Justin Fields. I mean, the Steelers won because of their defense, because of Chris Boswell. And you mean to tell me that the former defensive coordinator for the Lions, Aaron Glenn, is going to turn this Jets organization around in the right direction? Absolutely not. No chance. Justin Fields is a bad quarterback. That's what he is. He is continued to be a bad quarterback. We thought, okay, it's the Bears. And granted, the Bears organization has not been great year over year. He goes to the Steelers, where Mike Tomlin is a foundational piece of the NFL. He has a foundational core around that Steelers organization. And there was some optimism. Justin Fields might be the guy. They signed him to a 1-year deal. He gets benched for Russell Wilson. And you can't sit here and tell me that Russell Wilson is a good quarterback. He gets benched for Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson inevitably is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. And now he's going over to the Jets, who just last season had Aaron Rodgers. And granted, Aaron Rodgers came off an Achilles injury. He's getting older. You can't sit here and tell me that Justin Fields is going to find a new breath of fresh air and is going to make this team succeed. I don't see it happening. And the Jets are going to continue to be really, really bad. Them signing him to a 3-year deal, I found completely comical because he's not a good quarterback. That is a constant area that the Jets have struggled with, and they've shown that they can't develop as an organization. And granted, they've had a lot of turnover at that head coaching role. Year over year, they've shown they can't do anything with any quarterbacks that they have. Justin Fields does not bring any light that would tell me otherwise here. So Jets would not surprise me if the Giants actually overcome them and are third in the division over fourth.
Well, I feel like I was personally attacked during that rant, so
I felt very targeted.
so I'm going to respond. I'm going to respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
First things first, this is a 2 things can be true at once sort of situation, because I agree with you that the Jets are still going to be ass. I was actually, funny enough, when we were preparing for this episode, I put a Justin Fields hot take on my list. I was debating on whether or not I wanted to say it because it's kind of nonsense. But in that hot take, I included that I can see them winning like 6 games. Like they might end up winning 6 games. So I agree with you on that front. However, my take has continually been, and I'm standing by this, that Justin Fields is going to have the best season of his career with the Jets. And there are many reasons for that. But number one, this is a team that is, looking through their schedule, they're going to be playing a lot of teams that are much better than them, and they're going to be behind, and they're going to need to have a lot of offense to even try to compete. So Justin Fields is going to be used similar to how he was used with the Bears, except for with a way better roster, like not even in the same ballpark. This team's got weapons on the offensive side of the ball. They're going to be able to move the ball. I think Justin Fields, despite the fact that the team's going to suck, is going to throw for over 3,000 yards this season. I think he's probably going to have...
Is that an accomplishment?
It's an accomplishment for him. That's what I said. Best season of his career. That was the take. That's always been the take. So, and because of that, though, I think you are going to see a resurgence in Justin Fields because he's playing on the best team he's ever played on. By the way, this is the lowest expectations he's ever had, despite being in New York, which brings its own problems because of the media there. When he was with the Steelers, it was like, oh, you're competing with Russell Wilson, who obviously fucking sucks now. So if you don't beat him out, then you're useless. And when he was with the Bears, it was like he was the savior of the organization. He has to do something awesome. He's their new, young quarterback. Now it's like, if you suck, everyone kind of expects it. And because of the low expectations, because I don't think anyone outside of the New York market expects the Jets to be really good. I think Justin Fields is going to thrive in that environment relative to every other year of his career, and you're going to see him look better than he's ever looked in the NFL.
Draw the line in the sand, Alan. Which
I like that.
The line has been drawn. What side are you on?
I was just going to let you both kind of go back and forth, almost like
I don't know that we're really arguing. Club. I think we're saying the same sort of thing. I'm just saying that Justin Fields by himself is going to have relative success.
I think the hot take what I heard there is that the Giants are going to be better. Like Slaps feels more confident that the Giants will be better than the Jets.
Okay, I didn't say that. I said it would not surprise me.
I was trying to dig out a hot take within the hot take. I agree. I agree with Slaps. I think the Jets are going to just suck so bad. I think the things that held Justin back are going to continue to hold him back this season. And I think
he can't throw the ball.
No, it's painfully obvious, which is kind of wild because if you watch him coming out of Ohio State, and I mean, I watch a lot of college football, and he looked amazing. Like he could throw the deep ball, he could move, he could do whatever you want. You're like, wow, this guy's going to be a serviceable NFL player. Like by no means did anybody think he's going to go out there and win MVPs, but he's going to have a solid NFL career. He's going to throw the ball a bunch, and he's going to win some games, and he's going to be pretty good. And it's kind of almost mind-boggling that he's this bad statistically. And so, at some point, the statistics will tell you the truth. And I agree because it's it's the Bears, it's the Jets, it's the Steelers, it's whomever. But I mean, at some point, you are who you are, and I would largely agree. Like I think you're spot on.
And look, if you would have taken Justin Fields and put him with Kevin O'Connell, I think you're going to find a semblance of success because I have that much faith in Kevin O'Connell. But and there is, I understand Scotty's argument as far as this could be his best season yet. Not saying much in my mind. And you look at, okay, is Arthur Smith a great offensive mind? No, he's a fucking idiot. So yeah, the Steelers offense, like that, Arthur Smith is a bloke. The Bears organization, the entire time Justin Fields was there, was a fucking joke. So yeah, I understand that you can argue the developmental side of things, but you talk about college, I think that's where athleticism truly shines. And when you get to the pro level, it's what's between the ears. Do you have the brain? I'm not going to sit here and argue that Justin Fields is not athletic. I mean, that's why he's still in the league. That's why he's still finding jobs. But he cannot read a defense, and he can't perform on crunch time, and he can't perform when he.
Get 2 pairs of glasses for $99 the same day at Eyeglass World. I think I'll take Cammy home. Who? Cammy.
Can you, Slapdog? Can you hear us? Because it sounds like there's something playing on your computer, and we're hearing ads for eyeglasses.
Hearing ads for eyeglasses. Can you hear me?
You're back now. Yeah. I don't know what just happened. Maybe the Russians are hacking your internet because your takes on the Jets are so bad. But
probably. All right, Alan. Well, that's my hot take. I'm going to turn it over to you. Give us your first hot take.
This episode is off the rails. I was so confused on what that was. My hot take. I mean, I might have just like a lot of juicy hot takes. My first hot take is the Commanders are actually going to disappoint a lot of people this season.
I almost put that as my hot take, so I'm interested to see what this is.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the gist of it.
That's
I think they're going to regress. I think Jaden Daniels, I think he's really good. I think what happened last season, and I think what people view that season in like a silo is look at where they ended up, what a successful year they had. But I think they got there kind of by accident, and things kind of fell into their lap in certain ways. And there were certain throws and there were certain end of game situations that went their way that could easily have not. And I think they had a lot of signs of a team that still have a lot of holes to fill and still showed it to be a very young team. And so that's kind of where my hot take was emanating from, was that I think people have a lot of faith in this Commanders team and are almost, if you read anything, they're writing them as like a surefire number 2 in that division. There's no reason they shouldn't be right there. They should be back in the playoffs. And I think they're going to wildly disappoint. I think they easily miss the playoffs, and I think it's largely just because of this team is still figuring out how to operate. And Jaden Daniels, he had a dip in the middle of his fresh, his rookie campaign, and it's kind of that sophomore slump that everybody looks at. I think might rear its ugly head for this team, and so it's my hot take is that I just don't think the Commanders are going to live up to everybody's expectations going into.
You
want
to know what my concern is with the Commanders? Because I agree with you, and I'm going to say this is a good hot take because I think a lot of people are excited about the Commanders and what they can offer this year. My concern with this team is you're 1 or 2 injuries away from not having anything. And that's not to say Jane Daniels isn't great, because he is, but Terry and Debo are both 29 years old. Debo it has had injury concerns, and they went and got him. If you lose one of these guys, if you lose both these guys, Zach Ertz, he's 32 years old. Who are your running backs? Austin Eckler, who's also this team is aging themselves out to a point where you don't have a lot of roster depth in the event that you start losing some of these key pieces. And I think this could be a good sophomore slump-esque year for Jaden Daniels. I'm not taking anything away from him for output as far as career is concerned, but this season I do have some concerns, and I'm concerned that you're 1 or 2 injuries away from potentially not going as far as a lot of people have you projected to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's I think the depth behind there isn't even proven yet. Like, they're drafting, they're building, but they're largely hinging their success on a few guys. So I agree with you. I think Jaden Daniels he's going to still perform and have his moments, but I think largely the ultimate team outcome, the wins and losses and where they finish up, is going to fall well below what many people are expecting.
So you mentioned something there. I just want to dig my fingers into a little bit.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a saying, actually, now that I say that out loud.
It is now.
Okay. You said you think they might miss the playoffs handily.
Yeah.
Is that like your actual prediction, that they're not even a playoff team?
Yeah. I don't think they make the playoffs.
That's interesting, because I think on paper, I agree with you, first of all, that the likelihood that this team underperforms is pretty high, but that's just because they outperformed expectations so far last year.
Yeah.
So it's like they could still be a very good team and not come even close to what they were a season ago. But the team on paper is better in basically every spot on the field. So if it comes together, I think it would surprise a lot of people if they don't make the playoffs. I think I would have them at least making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Alan
I agree, babies.
Alan doesn't. All right,
hot
Scotty, bring us with your second hot take.
Which one do I want to do? Okay. What if I told you that there is a big body star wide receiver who kind of underperformed last year, but he underperformed in certain areas that make you think there's a lot of growth to be had? And I am talking, yes, Slaps, I can tell by your reaction, about Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a 1,000-yard season this year. He's going to put up a bunch of touchdowns. The Cardinals on offense are going to look a lot more cohesive. And I'm hinging this hot take on one stat that really jumps out at me, especially now that Marv is like a giant, beefy fucking bodybuilder guy.
Oh, he's yoked.
He's massive. But last season, he only caught 42% of his contested catches, which is like, when you're thinking of Marvin Harrison Jr., you think of he's going to make those catches. And he severely underperformed in that way. Conversely, or maybe alongside, with the fact that Kyler Murray's big statistical glaring error is his deep ball passing. So those things go hand in hand. If Marv can start catching an appropriate amount of these contested balls, and Kyler Murray gets that confidence to throw the ball deep, I think Marvin Harrison is going to explode this season. And I know, coming from the fantasy side of it, Marv had a good year. He had over 800 yards receiving. Like, he wasn't bad by any means. We talked about Johnny Smith. I know he's a tight end, but we're like, oh, he's a Pro Bowler. He had a crazy season. Marv outperformed Johnny Smith on every receiving metric. So it's not like he was bad. But I just think there's so much room for growth there. And in the second year in this offense, figuring it out with Kyler Murray, I think we're going to see a big step forward from Marvin Harrison Jr.
As a Cardinals fan, I couldn't agree with you more. Admittedly, like, I'm not even being facetious. I agree. I think taking the fandom out of it, I'm really high on Marvin Harrison this year, and I do believe that he will find a lot more success. My biggest concern is Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
That will be my biggest concern throughout the length of Marv's career with Kyler Murray is, can Kyler Murray stop being a jackass and actually be a competent quarterback? And I think regardless, we're going to find that he is going to he's going to have to lean on Marvin Harrison because he doesn't have any other options. He has nobody else to throw to. He's got Michael Wilson and Trey McBride. And so, yeah, Marv has to step up and be the wide receiver one for this team. And I do think that we will see that this year. And I think 1,000 yards, that to me is not a hot take. That's the floor, baby. Like let's see what we can do here. Because
crazy
he
having
needs
a floor
to do it.
that
So
would exceed his
I'm here
last
for it.
season's
And I
performance.
tend to agree with you. I think this is going to be a good year for him.
I loved Marvin Harrison coming out of college again because he's just a freak.
Give me 1 sec.
Oh, can you still hear me, Scotty?
I can hear you. I think you sound great.
Okay, I don't know if Slaps is.
I was wondering because I tried to interrupt him to make my point, and he just didn't. He just
sorry. We're having even more technical difficulties, but I'm back.
Okay. I was vibing off of the Marvin Harrison take. I think coming out of college, I mean, he was a freak, and in every dynasty, like I was like, man, I would love to have this dude because I think he's a surefire like Pro Bowler, perennial Pro Bowler. He gifted. He's he comes from a lineage that knows how to play that position, has been around what it makes to be a professional, and I think I like this one. I think it is a good hot take because I think a lot of people are going to sleep on him because I think he did come out so hyped, and then you had the jersey stuff, and then maybe it didn't look like what it was supposed to look like, but the output was there. So I think this has all of the makings of being just like a explosion of greatness all over Slapdog's chest.
Hell yeah, dude. Target me, baby. I will take this shirt off. I'll leave it on. Whatever we need to do to make sure we get there. I'll be your target hog. Okay. I'll take the next hot take here. My next hot take is Jalen Milroe, quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, drafted in the 3rd round this year. I think he finishes the season as a starting quarterback in Seattle. I really do. I think that there are a couple things that kind of come to mind. So I could go on a really long tangent about Sam Darnold and his history with various teams, his lack of success, and then everyone's going to bring up this revival story that he had with the Vikings last season. But the bottom line, gentlemen, is this: Sam Darnold is not a good quarterback. He just is not a good quarterback. I don't believe that he is. And do you know who is good? It's Kevin O'Connell. And so, yeah, guess who Sam Darnold is not playing with anymore? You mentioned perennial Pro Bowlers, Justin Jefferson. He doesn't have that anymore. Jordan Addison, another fantastic wide receiver. TJ Hawkinson. And Kevin O'Connell, the guy who actually was able to unlock some semblance of success with Sam Darnold, he's not playing with him either. Now he's playing with Mike McDonald, who is a defensive mind. And so Sam Darnold's offensive coordinator is Clint Kubiak, which has not instilled a ton of faith that he's going to be able to unlock quarterbacks at a high level. What happened with Derek Carr or whatever the Saints had as quarterbacks. So you pair this with the fact that Seattle moved on not just from Geno, which is why Sam Darnold now has a job, but they also moved on from DK Metcalf. This offense is going to lean very heavily in trying to get JSN the ball and Kenneth Walker. And that's really who you've got. This whole team is kind of under a rebuild, and Sam Darnold is not going to be a part of that long term. I don't believe in the talent that is or lack thereof of who Sam Darnold is. And, Seattle doesn't either. If you really get down to brass tacks, if it's Seattle, they kind of played their cards well in this. If you look at Sam Darnold's contract on the surface level, it's a 3-year, $100 million deal. Pretty big, pretty good contract for Sam Darnold. However, Seattle played this smart. They included a clause in this contract that they could get out from under him in just one singular year. So they also have their concerns and hesitations about who and what Sam Darnold is. I think Seattle's going to be at the bottom of the NFC West, and I think they're going to want to see, do we have something in Jalen Milroe, who was a good quarterback in college? I think there's a decent chance that Sam Darnold is going to be a pretty dang quick bust, and they're going to want to roll out Jalen Milroe to see if they have anything in him. And I do believe Milroe will end up as a starting quarterback in Seattle, at least to finish out the rest of the season.
Here's the only problem I have with this take is any offensive coordinator, head coach combination that can't make it work with Sam Darnold, I don't think can make it work with Jalen Milroe. I think Jalen Milroe is one of the most overrated college athletes in recent memory, and he's Anthony Richardson. He's exactly Anthony Richardson. And I just think he's got athleticism, but I have watched enough of Jalen Milroe in college look like a doofus that I have no faith he's going to have any real career in the NFL. Hopefully he proves me wrong and he's a millionaire and he's awesome, and I really hope that for him. I just don't see it. And I personally, if I'm starting a franchise today, I'm taking Sam Darnold over Jalen Milroe 10 times out of 10. It's not even close.
I would
That's
rather
a
have
hot
the
take.
athleticism and see if you have the brain of somebody not named Anthony Richardson in a Jalen Milroe body. And I think the other thing to kind of note too is, I obviously we're not privy to the conversations that are happening behind closed doors with Seattle, but they're in a semblance of a rebuild in my mind. And so how much time does the coaches have? Did they have that conversation saying, hey, we are in a rebuild, we're going to give you a little bit more grace as far as success? Or is this going to be one of those conversations where are we now on the hot seat because this team is ass, in spite of the fact that you guys blew up half of our team in this offseason? So that's another layer of the element that could come into this. Is Sam Darnold the guy? I don't think so. I don't think he's a talent. And if they do move on from him, what do you do now? Where's your draft capital at? Are you able to get a quarterback? And so that's kind of why I lean towards them. Okay, we took Jalen Milroe in the third. Do I think Jalen Milroe is a fantastic quarterback? No, I don't. But do I think that he could be better than Sam Darnold? Yes, I do, because I don't believe in Sam Darnold.
You gonna break the tie, Alan?
God damn it! I knew you guys were going to ask me to break the tie.
That's what you're here
I didn't
for.
want to do it. I have to agree. I do not believe in Sam Darnold. I don't think he's the future of any organization.
What about Goodwill?
He struck gold being on the coaching staff and being in the situation he was in the Vikings. And all, I don't want to reiterate everything that's already been said because I think they're all fair points, but it's like everybody was waiting for the shoe to drop when he was going to turn into Sam Darnold again. And it happened in the playoffs and everybody saw it live. And it was like, yeah, I mean, that's what you get in a pressure situation with him. Is like, that's kind of how he operates. And I think the Seahawks are going to demand a lot, and I don't think they're going to get that. And so I like that. I think it makes sense. I don't know if Milroe is going to be the answer either, because I also largely agree. He feels like another Richardson 2.0. Like, it feels like the same thing's going to happen, but who knows? I mean, a lot of what ails Richardson is his own body. So we'll see what this turns into for the Seahawks. But I think that's a juicy one. I know I'm up next. Are we just going to do 3 since it's the 3 of us?
We're already
That's
at
up
an
to you
hour,
guys.
so
Yeah.
let's finish out this round and see if we're still feeling good.
Okay. Oh shit. Then I got to figure out which one I want to do.
Oh yeah, pick wisely.
I have a really good one.
I have one. I'm going to jump it then. I'm just going to do it. I think this year Bryce Young passes CJ Stroud. I think
Just
people at the end of this year are going to look at
this.
Bryce Young better than they look at CJ Stroud. And I think people are going to question the development of CJ Stroud and where he's going as a quarterback. And they're going to be like, we were wildly wrong about Bryce Young. We threw dirt on him way too early. That's my hot take.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do
Yeah.
you think, maybe it's a combination of both, do you think that if this happens, it's going to be because we misevaluated CJ Stroud, or because Bryce Young is just actually so good? Like, do you think CJ Stroud is going to be so bad that this happens, or do you think Bryce Young is going to be so good that this happens?
I think it's going to be because Bryce Young continues to perform and develop in a way that people weren't expecting. I think a lot of people, including myself, threw dirt on him rather quickly. And I think seeing how he ended last year and just seeing how this team was coming together and how he was starting to command it, I think people are going to look at him and be like, wait, I think actually Bryce Young is probably the better long-term prospect than CJ Stroud. It's not going to have anything to do with CJ Stroud, but that's my hot take for this season.
I can't.
One of many. One of freaking many. Let's hear it, Scotty.
Well, I agree with you that I think Bryce Young, obviously, given the way that he performed, especially toward the tail end of last season, was like, wow, like, okay, maybe we were totally wrong about this guy. So I don't disagree with all that at all. But I think the reason CJ Stroud had such a significant sophomore slump is injuries on the team, including the offensive line. I think there were a lot of other factors that made, because CJ Stroud didn't have a terrible season. He just didn't have a great season compared to his amazing rookie season. And so I think we see that stark contrast, and that's largely because of the roster around him. I also think that because of the roster and the talent around him, I have more faith in the Texans as a whole right now than I do the Panthers. And I think that lends a lot more credibility to the idea that CJ Stroud is going to see more on-field success, even though Bryce Young is taking big steps forward and looking a lot better. So I don't see Bryce Young replacing CJ Stroud, like you said. I do see Bryce Young looking better than we expected.
Thoughts?
It's interesting. I had we each brought a list of 5 hot takes to do today, and one of them I toyed with the idea of exploring something about Bryce Young, because I think Bryce Young is going to surprise a lot of people this year. I agree with you there. I can't get on the train of saying he's going to surpass CJ Stroud, because I agree with Scotty. I think there were a lot of things that happened with CJ Stroud that were not necessarily his fault. His offensive line play, as Scotty mentioned, was terrible. He lost all of his wide receivers due to injury. And that, I mean, we were having conversations last offseason. Is this one of the best wide receiver rooms in the NFL with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Stephon Diggs? In quick fashion, all 3 of them were gone. And like that's a problem for a starting quarterback. So yeah, I think CJ had the sophomore slumps, but I think some of that was not his fault, and I think that makes it really difficult to play at a high level when you lose all 3 of your talented weapons. However, I do expect big things for Bryce Young this year, and maybe that might be kind of hot take-ish, but kind of what you said, Alan, as far as how he finished off last season. He kind of instilled some confidence in people that he can be the guy moving forward. And they go get Tet McMillan. And so you look at his wide receiver room. What have they done to help him in years past? Adam Thielen has been his wide receiver 1, and you had Xavier Legette last year. I think Tet McMillan's a great addition for them, and I think that this is going to be a really interesting season. And Bryce Young's going to have to showcase, can I be the guy moving forward? Second half of last season, he did, and now I want to see it coming hot out of this season too. So, but I struggle to sit here and say that he's going to surpass CJ Stroud. That I can't get on board with, but I do expect big things for Bryce Young.
I like it.
So, all right, Scotty. Bring another one here.
All right, I'm jumping to the top of my list. Not because this is the hottest take, because a lot of people there's a certain segment of our listener base who's gonna be like, no fucking shit, like that's not that hot of a take. But I love this one. I love this one so much that I'm going to say it, which is this. Yeti, if you're listening, listen close, buddy. The Raiders' defense is going to finish dead last in points allowed in 2025. They're going to be the worst defense in the NFL. I want you to think. Let's think back to Mr. What's his name? Trey Hendrickson. Great player. He could not dig the Bengals defense out of the bowels of hell to save his life. Max Crosby's in the same situation because this Raiders defense lost some stars. They already have Christian Wilkins has been in a walking boot like every other week this offseason, and he dealt with injuries all last year. And then you also lost, what's his name? Spillane is gone now. He's going to New England, which that's the 3 players on the defense. That's it. Everyone else is role players. And 2 of the 3 are, well, one of the 3 is gone. The other one is like, maybe he'll play some of the season. And then the other is Max Crosby, who's awesome. We love Max Crosby. But I think that this defense is going to be so pitiful. And you combine with the fact that they finished bottom 10 in 2024 with all of these people relatively healthy. The AFC West is so much better on offense. They're going to be so much better on offense. And this defense is going to struggle even more than they did last season. I think it's going to be a bloodbath for the Raiders.
This is completely contradicting one of my hot takes. And the next one I was going to bring to the table being the Raiders finished second in the AFC West.
Well, listen, their offense is going to get a lot better. So that still could happen. But if it happens, it's going to be a Bengals situation. I
think the Raiders do finish second in the AFC West. I think they've completely transformed their potential this offseason, and it started with Pete Carroll, and then he brought in Geno Smith. Their offense was arguably the biggest problem last season for them. And not only did they get Geno, but they also added Jack Besh. They added Ashton Genty. They have a young all-rookie center in Jack Powers. They have their starting right tackle at DJ Glaze, both of whom were drafted last season alongside with Bowers. I really think that this Raiders team is on the rise. And I'm not saying that Geno Smith is a world breaker. I don't think that's the case whatsoever. But I do think he is leaps and bounds better than Gardner Minshew and or Aiden O'Connell. And the fact that not only did they bring in Pete Carroll said, hey, I want to go get a guy that I have rapport with and I trust to run the offense the way I want it to be ran. And that's what they went and did. And so Geno's not a bad quarterback, and I don't think he's a great quarterback. But as you mentioned, I think this AFC West division is getting harder and harder. And I think that the Raiders, are going to surprise a lot of people. I have the Raiders going 10-7 this season.
Ugh.
And I think that they're going to be second in the AFC West.
Ugh.
So
I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk bad about the Chiefs backup quarterback and Gardner Minshew, please.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was like, where is he now? And then I realized he was with the Chiefs, and I was like, is he like living in a van outside of Arrowhead? Like, I wonder what he's up to these days.
Probably. I would assume that's where he is. These are interesting hot takes. So I want to like react to Scotty's first. I could see this playing out, and the only way it doesn't is very directed towards what the thing Slap's saying is our improvement is the offense. I think if Genty can keep their defense off the field, then I think it largely plays out like what you're saying, Scotty, can't happen, obviously, because the defense is not out there. So I think this is largely dependent on that offensive line and that running game. If they can grind out drives and keep that defense off the field, I could see that happening. I think they're going to have to play a different way than what everybody else is expecting. I think the Chargers kind of figured that out last year. I think they tried to slow things down. I think obviously the Chiefs and I think the Broncos are going to want to get up and down. Like they're going to want to sling it and they're going to want to get up and down. And I think it's going to be contrasting styles from 4 teams in the AFC West where I think they're going to want to attack each other a little differently. I think 2 teams are going to want to slow it way down and grind it out. And you have 2 teams that are going to want to press. And it's who's ultimately gonna win out in that war of attrition. So I could see both playing out. I think it's really good takes because I do think that defense does take a step back, but I think it's almost like on the flip side, does Bowers and Genty and Geno Smith outweigh some of the deficiencies that they do have on defense? So I think while they are hot takes, I think they're kind of competing for each other right now, and to see how the season will play out, I'll be interested to see how the Raiders handle it.
Let me bring it together then, because I agree with you that the Raiders offense is going to look leaps and bounds better than it did obviously last season when they barely had anybody. Maybe this is a Bengals situation and this team automatically just coming out of the gate starts putting up points, and then other teams have to sling it to keep up with the Raiders offense, and their defense completely shuts down. So maybe they finish second in the division and their defense is ass, similar to what the Bengals did.
I struggle to see a world in which the Raiders offense is that great is what the Bengals were. But I look at the competition and I do think that, you know, the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders, I kind of all see in similar fashion as far as they're all building towards something, and they're all going to be, it's going to be a very difficult division like that. And it's going to continue to be that way for years to come. And so I'm kind of excited to see some competition for the Chiefs because we haven't seen it the last few years. But I don't know if the offense is going to be stellar, but I think the offense is going to be very competent and a good offense, one that we haven't seen out of the Raiders the last few seasons. I'm not as concerned with their defense as you are, Scotty, and that's kind of where I lay my hat at is, yeah, the Broncos, I think, have the best defense right now in that division. Arguably, maybe throw the Chiefs in there as well, but the Raiders still have, in my mind, a very good defense. And
defense that was bottom 10 in the league last year and lost 2 of their stars, or 1.5 of their stars. There's no way it's better than last season, I don't think.
I don't know. I maybe I put too much faith in Pete Carroll, and maybe I go back to Legion of Boom days where I think he can get the best out of his players. So that kind of comes to mind as well. The
secondary is the problem.
Sure, and I understand that.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is the problem. Everything's a problem except for Max Crosby. And granted, Max Crosby's amazing. Max Crosby's amazing. And if he can get pressure, that can shut down offenses by itself. But I just don't see this team even reaching where they were last season on the defensive side of the ball. And I mean, I guess while we're talking about it, second in the division to me seems crazy because it seems like the Broncos have that locked. If I think the Broncos are going to be competing with the Chiefs for a lot of the season, given how good their defense is. And, you know, obviously the steps that we've already seen them take on the offensive side of the ball. For me, it's still Chiefs number 1 and Broncos, I think, are easy number 2. And I would put the Raiders probably last, but I could see an argument for third.
I guess
it's a hot take, baby.
I've got a second in the AFC, so we'll see how this pans out. Alan,
I like that hot take. Yeah, I guess if this might be one of my final hot takes.
Let's do one more after this. Are we okay with that?
Okay. Well, I'm still going to just do this one anyways. Hot take I have is the Patriots are going to win both games against the Bills and make the playoffs. So my take is that the Patriots are going to develop quicker, and I think Drake May is going to develop faster than many people think. I think they also showed signs last year of this happening. They went toe to toe with the Bills. I think they make a lot of improvements on the coaching staff, on the defense. I think offense still needs to take some step forward, but I think that's my hot take, is that I think they sweep the season against the Bills, is one, and then two, that propels them to a playoff berth in the AFC. So I think the Patriots are back in the playoffs largely due to their success over the Bills this season.
Do you think it's because they signed Stephon Diggs and he's on a revenge tour?
Yeah, he's got all the cocaine just to make it happen. No, I think I mean, I don't know why. It's just oddly, it just seems one of those things where it's like it's kind of lurking there. I don't know if people want to admit it or not, or don't want to address it, because I think many people still feel like it's Miami and it's the Bills and that's how it's going to be. But I think the Patriots finish second in that division and make the playoffs. I think that's what ultimately is going to propel this team forward this year, and I think they're going to sneak up on some people.
Beating the Bills twice, I struggle to see that happening. That is a hot take, because I don't see that in the, out of all the takes you brought to the table today, this is the one that I struggle with the most, because I think the Patriots are on the rise, and I really do believe in Vrabes and what he's going to build there, but I still think there's some pieces away. And that's really where I largely struggle with. I believe in Drake May. I believe in what the future outlook of what this Patriots team is going to be. I don't see him beating the Bills. Maybe once. I'll get on board for that, but beating him twice and going to the playoffs over the Bills is something I can't get on board with.
Well, the Bills will still be in the playoffs. That wasn't the
Bills are going to
Will
win the
they
Super
lead
Bowl.
the division though?
Yeah,
Are you saying the Patriots are going to lead the division?
No, I was saying they finished second in the division.
Okay,
and I think they make the playoffs. But
I could still see that. Where I am pulling the highlighter out and marking is the fact that they beat the Bills twice. I don't see that happening.
That'd be exciting.
It would be
Very
sweet.
funny.
I'm very excited if it plays out.
It'd be cool to have that
I have
rivalry
no
come
skin in
back.
this game. I'm rooting for you, buddy.
Yeah,
but I'm
I agree.
I'm not going to be on that train with you.
It's a long shot. That's why it's a hot take.
It is, yeah. No, I like it. I like it. Scotty, you have anything else to add on that one?
No, I think I agree with the general sentiment. You know, if you're predicting 1 or 2 games in the season, that's a coin flip. Anything can happen. You know, Josh Allen might take a day off once or twice, and then
if Josh Allen's injured, I'll be the conductor of that train, Allen. But if Josh Allen's on the field, I can't be
Choo-choo.
near that train.
Choo-choo.
All right, let's do one more, Scotty. Bring us home with your last hot take of the day.
Oh yeah, Allen, this one's for you, friend.
Yeah, baby.
Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns this season.
MVP.
This is going to be a top 3 career performance for Patrick Mahomes, because he has a receiving core that doesn't, revolve around Juju Smith-Schuster, and that's going to be huge. I think that, he did it in 2018. He did it in 2022. Obviously, Tyreek Hill was there for those. But I think that, obviously, you can't really replace Tyreek Hill, or we don't foresee that happening right now with any of the players on this team. But I think as an overall receiving core, this is the best, well-rounded receiving core that Patrick Mahomes has had. The big problem with them, as we saw last season, is the offensive line, and they've worked to address that. There's still question marks there. They're going to be relying probably on some rookie talent, obviously some free agent talent. But assuming that the offensive line can perform to some semblance of a solid degree, I think we're going to see Patrick Mahomes return back to his form that we saw in 2018, 2020, 2022. It's going to be a big year for old Patty.
You have my support, because the last time he had those statistics was the top 4 receivers that I shared earlier with Jerick McKinnon, Juju Smith-Schuster, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Travis Kelce. Those were his top 4 receivers. I agree. I think he's going to be on a revenge tour. I think that wide receiver room is finally healthy. They didn't have all of those pieces together in one spot, playing at the same time. And I think I honestly, I could see it. I could see everybody being pissed off now that the pressure is off to try to go for 3 in a row. I think now it's like, fuck them. I think I could embrace that mindset. And I think, we touched on that Up and Adams show with Kay Adams that it just came out today. And I think that's largely how Pat is, hey, I heard you guys talking. That's fine. Let's go play. And I think that's largely what's going to happen. So I agree. I'm going to tack on mine, because my last one, I also had the MVP, but I'm going to add one thing on there. I think Xavier Worthy is a 1,000-yard receiver. That is my hot take for this season.
You think Rashee Rice gets there too?
Gets hurt?
no. You think Xavier Worthy is the better wide receiver than Rashee Rice as far as
I think he's just
statistical
going to
output?
I think he's just going to get the 1,000 yards. I think Hollywood and Rashee Rice are going to demand a lot of attention, but I think they're going to cook up so many packages underneath where he's just going to be running a ton. I think his yards after catch are going to be unreal this season. And my hot take is he goes over 1,000.
Okay.
React to all of that.
Are you gonna
during
be
this
the
Chiefs
Chiefs
segment.
hater or the Chiefs supporter in this moment?
No, I'm gonna say
It's like
I'm
the
just gonna-
devil angel on your shoulders.
Yeah, what do you want to do?
Which way you going?
I lean more towards yes, and 5,000 still seems like a lot to me. I won't get on board with that, but I do see a much improved offense for the Chiefs this year. So I'm not fully vested in this hot take, but I will lean more towards agreement with you. I think you look at the hodgepodge group of whatever the fuck the Chiefs offense was last year, and it admittedly was embarrassing. But we saw that all season long. And you guys as Chiefs fans, we would get on the show every single week and be like, yeah, the Chiefs shouldn't have won that game, but you found a way to do it, right? Like that was the story of the Chiefs all last year. And the fact that you guys hobbled your way into the Super Bowl was very impressive. Now, we saw what happened in the Super Bowl. That was very embarrassing. But I think that
You got to be in the Super Bowl to get embarrassed, friend.
Amen.
What's
Amen. That's word.
You got to be in the
Rob.
Super Bowl to get embarrassed.
No, you guys as Chiefs fans can't sit here and say you were proud of what was displayed on the field in that Super Bowl. It was an embarrassment. The fact that Kenny Pickett came out and was playing snaps in the Super Bowl is embarrassing. Like that, that's just the truth. And
Well,
but
wow.
I agree.
They have Nick
and
Sirianni. What could we do? They got
Yeah.
Nick Sirianni, the best coach in the history of football.
Amen.
We got outcoached.
But I do think that, obviously the glaring problem was injuries and the offensive line. And in the event that the Chiefs can fix those things, which I do think that they will, you're going to see a much improved offense. And so I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes is going to throw 5,000 yards. I won't get behind that. But I do expect the offense for the Chiefs to be a hell of a lot better this season. In the event that, of course, Rashee Rice doesn't go to jail and all those wide receivers can stay healthy, I'll buy into a good Chiefs offense because I think that there's no reason not to.
What about 4,700 yards?
Put me at 45.
All right.
And
I want to say this just because it's really
I'll get
fun
on
to
that
say.
tree.
So in the last 3 Super Bowls that the Chiefs have been in, they've had a different left tackle every time. And like that, to your point, they got to figure out how to keep him healthy, and they got to figure out a way to keep because it all starts with the offensive line. I know it's the old adage in sports, but you guys know that it's the offensive line that makes the offense hum. And when that's not on solid ground, and you literally have games where Mahomes is trying to get their rookie running back to go and like chip because their left tackle sucks so bad, and like he's furious, and there's all these holding penalties or procedural penalties, and like that's honestly the reason why they were in a lot of those close games and why they weren't able to sustain drives. And it's like at the end of last year, it was just like basically, hey, Mahomes, can you go get us in field goal range so we can try to win this thing? Thanks. See you later. And that was pretty much it. I think that's a super, super hot take, but I definitely love it. And I agree with you. I agree with you, Slaps. That was not a great Super Bowl showing, and I'm happy to move forward.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'm going to bring my my last hot take here for the day, and that is that Raheem Morris, Falcons head coach, is going to get fired by the end of the season.
Oh, I love this.
By the end of the season.
Yeah, either at the end of the season or before. Raheem Morris, this is his second year as the head coach with the Falcons. He at one point in time was the interim head coach for the Falcons back in 2020. And if you include that, he went 12-16. But his first season here with the Falcons as the actual head coach, he finished 8-9 last season. The Falcons started off hot at 6-3, but he fumbled the second half of the season. Pro Football has Raheem ranked as the 22nd best head coach in the league. And looking at the Falcons schedule, I have the Falcons again finishing the season at 8-9. And that's not to say that they don't have talent on this roster. And that's why I think Raheem Morris loses his job, is because I think that He's not a good head coach. I don't think he's a defensive mind. And what have they done defensively to showcase that they are going to, not that they don't have talent on the roster, but I don't believe in him as a head coach. And I think that in the event that they do go 8-9, which is where I have them finishing the season at, the Falcons are going to have to move on from him because they're in a window right now where they can compete at a very high level, and they're not getting that out of their coaching staff. They need to go find somebody who's going to be able to unlock them. This has been a continuous conversation that we've had year over year. And yes, Arthur Smith is a fucking moron. Yes, there's a reason he's not there as the head coach anymore. But year over year, Scotty and I, you and I have gone back and forth in agreement that this Falcons team is a really good team. This Falcons team on paper is a really good team. The problem at one point in time was Desmond Ridder was their quarterback. The problem was that they had Arthur Smith as a head coach. I don't think Raheem Morris is going to get the best out of this team, and I don't think he's the guy moving forward. So I think that largely due to the fact that there is so much talent on this roster, they're going to have to go find somebody who is going to be able to unlock this team in a much better fashion than anything we've seen from Raheem Morris, and I don't think he's going to get it done this season. So I think he's gone.
I think I like that. That's I think it's not even as hot as maybe in my brain, because I'm like, yeah, I could see that happening. I think that feels really good, actually. I think this also underscores how difficult it is in the NFL, how many things have to go right for everything to like play out on the field, because I think there's a lot of rosters out there like, damn it, if they just had a competent quarterback, they'd be unstoppable. I look at like the Vikings, for instance. It's like, damn it, if they just had a quarterback that could put it together for them, they would be, there's sky's the limit for them. You know, they're always just like a few pieces away, or their head coach away, or damn it, if we just had this, or this guy didn't get hurt. And I think it's tough to do, but I like that. And I largely agree. And for like Falcons fans, I feel you. And I hear you both too all the time talking about this. And it's tough because if you put it all on paper, you're like, damn, this team is really, really good. And then you see it on the field. You're like, what the fuck happened Monday through Saturday? Like, where did you guys go wrong all week? What were you preparing for? And then you see whatever happens to them play out. So I agree.
I think if you said that he would be fired within 2 years, I'd be all on board. I don't think he's going to lose his job before the end of next season, primarily because, first of all, recent hire, but second of all, they have what is basically a rookie quarterback. And we all know, number one, that extends the leash for head coaches when you have a young quarterback that's still trying to figure it out. But number two, we've also seen time and time again just the pure turmoil that unfolds when you replace a head coach with a young quarterback. And you make this young quarterback learn this offense, and then bam, it's all erased, and now you have a new guy. And I just don't think that they're going to be willing to do that soon. I think that's like an eject button, like, oh shit, everything's on fire. Like they win 3 games and then that happens. But I think ultimately this team, given their division, like they're going to be competing in this division. And they were last year when we saw them kind of suck, and they're going to do it again this season. And so even if they underperform by our standards, we look at the roster and we're like, this team should be really, really good. In their division, they're still going to be competing. And I think that Penix has a chance to grow and get better on the offensive side of the ball. The biggest problem is their defense, but they've been working on the personnel on the defensive line for so long. If they get that figured out, the defense is going to take a big step forward too. So I don't necessarily disagree with them being kind of an average middle of the pack team, but I don't see Morris getting fired this season.
And that's kind of leads into why I think he will. Because he is supposed to be a defensive mind. He is supposed to be the guy that's going to lean on his defense and be able to kind of have them carry you to success. And he didn't do that last season. And the other thing, I actually have high expectations for Michael Penix. I do think Michael Penix will be very good, and I think he will be good for this team. And I think that's part of why we do see him get Raheem Morris get fired, is because Penix is also kind of old for a rookie quarterback last season, right? He's 26 years old last season, I believe. And so he's going to be 27 as a second-year quarterback. And it's like your frontal lobe finishes developing, I think, at 25, right? So he's kind of got an advantage there as far as he's not a fucking kid. He's a grown man. And all to say, I don't think... And the piece that we don't know and we're not going to know is what happened with Kirk Cousins. And I'm really excited Quarterbacks comes out today for all of you listening. And so hopefully we'll get a little bit more insight there. But what we're not going to know is, did you want to start Michael Penix week 1, Raheem Morris? Was he the person you would have rather started week 1, but because you paid Kirk Cousins an exorbitant amount of money and signed him. You wanted to see what was going on there. Was there pressure from the general manager for all of this that played out? Those are the things that kind of weigh into my thought process as well, is why did you roll Michael Penix out when you did? I think that's a really boneheaded move. And yes, Kirk Cousins wasn't playing at a high level, but you were still winning games. You were still competing for a playoff berth. And now you decide to roll Michael Penix out when you're still competing. There are just some boneheaded decisions that I don't think make him a good head coach. And I think Penix is going to showcase, okay, I am going to be a competent quarterback. I can lead this offense in spite of the fact that we have poor coaching from Raheem Morris. So that's why I think he goes. But that's my hot take. And Alan, you got one more? You got the last one to bring us home?
No, I kind of piggybacked on
I guess, yeah,
Scotty's
you piggybacked off
with the
Scotty's.
1,000 yards. I mean, I can reach in there and grab another one, but that was my conclusion to all of my picks.
Okay.
Was the 1,000 for Xavier. I like your, I mean, I could see exactly where you're going. Here's my final question. Let's tie a bow on this Falcons discussion. They won 8 games last year. You got the over under on that this year.
I have them winning 8. I have them going 8-9 again this season.
Same exact record.
Hold on.
You do as well, or you're just saying I have the same record?
No, same. I could see him going exactly that again.
Okay.
I'm counting. I'm going to put it at 10. I'm going to put it at 10 wins. I think they sneak a couple out. I think Penix takes a step forward. I think the defense is a little bit better. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think 10 wins
I think
is
the nice
reasonable.
the nice thing for them is I think the Saints might win 2 games. So somebody, there's 2. There's 2 easy wins for you.
Hopefully they don't drop one against that. That would be a really bad sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So I have them at 8-9, right at where they finished out last season. And I think that there's going to be a lot of turmoil, and it would not surprise me in the slightest if Raheem Morris is no longer with the Falcons, but I guess we'll see. So,
I can't wait to clip this when Bijan rushes for 2,000 yards this season and they're like a 15-win team. It's going to be hilarious.
Hey, man, this is why it's hot takes. This is just my thoughts and projections of where I sit now. What do I know? What do I know? So, all right, gentlemen, this has been a rather long episode. For all you brainiacs that have made it to the end of the Hot Take Show, I do sincerely apologize for the insane amount of technical difficulties and challenges we have overcome to bring this show to you. But I will say this: there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are working on, hopefully by the start of the NFL season, have a studio in person where we will all be recording, which is very exciting. So there's more to come there, but hopefully that will kind of reduce some of these technical difficulties down the stretch. And gentlemen, I appreciate you guys doing the show with me. It's been a blast. We've had everybody here under the same umbrella here today, which is great. And we'll look to do the same next week. Last thing for all you brainiacs out there, if you are not already, go follow us on all social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We got it all. Go hit the follow button over there. And if you're stopping by any of your favorite podcast platform, hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star review. It truly does mean the world to a small podcast such as ourselves. Let's get the hell out of here, gentlemen. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out LeatherBrainz.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.